Hey, what's up everyone? It's Jade from Themeco bringing you another video that is an addition to the Creative Column series. In this video, we will cover a workaround approach on how to add contents over an image, and I'll show you some ways on how to have the column contents have an interaction with the hover effect, just like this. Achieving this effect to your elements can be easily done by adding a few lines of CSS codes and have the animated smooth transition effect without needing to write any custom JavaScript codes. So let's jump into our builder and get started with the tutorial. So I have my column set up here, and this design is based on one of the templates available in the Design Cloud, which is a fresh pricing template. I slightly tweaked the design and came up with this layout, and so far I did not add any custom codes to achieve this output. I only made use of the available options that are in the builder. So from here, our goal is to improve our current design by adding some interactive effects to our elements inside a column, and we're going to achieve that with minimal lines of CSS codes, just using pure CSS and no JavaScript involved. So the first thing we need to consider before adding our custom codes is that we want to achieve the same interactive effect to the three of our columns here. Also, the elements inside our columns are the same. So to make things more compact, we can write CSS blocks that we could reuse to each of the columns out here and the elements inside them. We can make that possible by assigning a common class to the columns and then the elements we want to add the hover effects to. So let's start working on our first column. Firstly, let's assign a class to this column. In this case, we're going to use interactive column. Now we can make use of this class to refer to this column, so when we go to our content CSS, we can have interactive column, then the CSS opening and closing braces. What we want to do right now is to kind of nudge the price downwards from its original placement, then push it closer to the heading text. To do that, we can make use of the CSS transform property, then adjust the translate Y value so that we can move our price element. Translate Y because you are trying to move this element into its Y axis, which is in its vertical direction. So let's do that now. But before that, we have to assign a class first to our headline element, which is the price block in this case. So let's say assign price to that. And when we go back to our CSS, content CSS, we can have that price here. So to nudge it lower, we could use the transform property. Then set the translate Y to somewhere around 40 pixels. Now from its original position, it got nudged down 40 pixels below. And also I wanted to have this kind of flush effect. So to do that, I will use the opacity property, then set it to around 0.4. Next, let's try to add a hover effect where when we hover to our column, the price element will nudge back to its position and also increase its opacity. So for that, we can make use of the hover pseudo selector. What this means is when the page element where interactive column class is added to it is hovered, the element that has the class price will have this CSS values. So let's put it back to 10 pixels and around 8. So when you try to hover the column, it would have that effect. However, for now, there is no smooth transition. It kind of looks stiff, but let's leave it that way because we'll add a transition effect later on. Next, let's work on the button element. First thing first, add a class to that button. Let's say it's CTA BTN. Call to action button. Go back to the content CSS. Then just copy the class. What we want to do is initially have the button invisible. To do that, we could just set the opacity to 0. And then when we have the hover effect, just copy that and add the hover pseudo selector and have the opacity to 1. So now we have some hover effects. However, there is no smooth transition. And to have the smooth transition, all we have to do is to target the price and the button elements. Then add the transition property. Then let's say that's gonna complete in 0.8 seconds. So when you try to hover, there is now this smooth transition effect to our button. And for this one, let's try to actually slide, not just display the button, but to make it slide from up here downwards when it's displaying. So for that, we can just copy this because we're gonna move the button upwards initially. So that is translate Y. And in this case, let's say -40. And from -40, as it is getting displayed, let's put that to 0. So there you have it. Now we have completed the effect for this column. So all you have to do now is to assign the same classes to the rest of the columns. From here, just copy the interactive class. And I already have that set earlier. And this one is price. Button is CTA button. And lastly, it's price. So just by writing a few lines of codes, we're able to create this subtle effect to our column elements. We didn't even have to rewrite the code since we made use of the class feature that we could assign to each of the elements and columns as well. As usual, we will be placing a link to the gist that contains the code we use in this tutorial in the description box below, so feel free to copy the codes and improve it as well. Thank you for watching and have a good one.